Welcome to Module 5, Section 14, where I'll go through a few websites that you might find useful. I'm not going to do this as a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my desktop and just show you some of the websites that I've been talking about. All of the links will be in the description below this video. What I'll start with is a chart that I showed during the course, and it's at Investingcom. It's freely available. You can sign up. There is a paid version of this website, which I don't participate in. But this just gives you a good overview of what's happening all over the world at any given time. As I record this, the US market is closed. China is open. Europe is getting ready to open pretty soon. But we have a list of all of the major indexes all over the world. We start with the US indexes at the top, and we go all the way down, and eventually we get to see China and Vietnam and some other indexes that we probably don't pay that much attention to, but it's still good to have that information available. Over on the right-hand side, I can see what the futures contracts are doing for the Dow, that's the US 30, and the S&P 500, which is the US 500. The one thing that they don't include on this site that would be helpful are some NASDAQ futures or NASDAQ 100 futures. If I click on this little box, I can go over and look at how crude oil is doing, gold, silver, soybeans if I'm interested in that. And I can look at some of the more popular ETFs with the SPY being at the top of the list. And this little red circle here or clock means that the market is currently closed. Another thing that can be useful about this site is if I go to the top and click on crypto, this brings up all of the different cryptocurrencies that are trading, and then you have a 15-minute chart. And as I record this, some news came out that cryptocurrencies didn't like, and Bitcoin is starting to go down a little bit, although it's near its all-time highs. This is the website that I follow the most when the market is closed. When the market is open, I go to stockcharts.com. This is not free, although there are some free tools that you can use at this website. I have a membership, and I've been a member of stockcharts.com for quite a while. If I click on my account where it says your dashboard, this brings up just an overall view of the markets. The one criticism I have about stock charts is when the stock market closes in the US, this website pretty much closes. Yes, there are some things that are updated an hour, 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours after the market closes. You can't really get any after hours or overnight market information from this website. That's why I go over to investing.com. If I click on the chart list, this is a list of all the different charts that I have. A lot of the things that I look at every day. A lot of different markets, a lot of different ways to look at the S&P 500, as well as different markets that can influence the S&P 500. And these guys are pretty good. There have been a few indicators that I really liked that they retired, and I contacted them and they said they're no longer available. I said, well, would you please make them available? And they said no. So it's too bad because one of the indicators that comes to mind was really helpful and gave us some real good indications a day or two before major things happened in the markets. But they decided to take that off anyway. So those are the two main websites that I go to. Investing.com when the market's closed, stockcharts.com when the market is open. At the end of each day, I'll go to the CNN Money website where they have the fear gauge. And I look at this and I include this as part of my daily video updates. But what I really look at is down below, where we put all of these things together and have a chart to measure overall fear or greed at any given time. And we can see over on the right-hand side, we're working off an extreme greed reading right now. So if we were to see the market pull back from here, that would not necessarily be surprising. It doesn't mean that the uptrend is over. It just means we might be slowing down or pulling back. Another site that I've mentioned for geopolitical information, I love their information, but I don't like their company. I'm getting pretty angry with them. I renewed my subscription a number of months ago, and you'll see up here on the right-hand side, it tells me that I have to sign in. And when I sign in, it tells me that my subscription has expired. And I've contacted them over and over, and they say that they've fixed it only to not have it fixed. And if these guys don't get on the stick pretty soon, I will stop recommending them. Even though their information is good, if I can't get to the information, it's useless to me. Another site that I've recommended from time to time is briefing.com. I do look at this during the day. You'll notice that I'm not even logged in this account, but I can still access the information that I want. One of the things that I look at is just a thing called the stock market update. And this updates periodically during the night as well as during the day. And it gives you a history that you can go back and look through. They do a pretty nice summary of the close where they just go back and look at the overall day and what happened. But this is free, even though there are paid parts to this website. I just use the free parts. The other parts really don't interest me at all. Another thing that I heavily use, and I talked about in one of my videos, is the economic calendar. And they changed the format for this. It's not as effective to me as it used to be. There's another economic calendar that I'm starting to use, but I still rely on this one heavily. For example, when I record this, November 16th, 2021, these are the economic reports that are due out. And then if you click way over here, this will end up giving you a chart of what is happening with that economic report. We can also scroll down, and any other information that is supplemental to this report will also be available. So this is pretty good. What I end up doing for the videos that I produce is I come over here and I will click on the this week. And then I take this information and I put it into my own spreadsheet. And that's when I color code it, where it's very important, not very important. It came in above, at, or below expectations. And then I talk about that in my videos. Another website that you might find useful is a thing called financialsense.com. This is a podcast that I listen to, and it's a free podcast. It comes out Friday evening, Saturday morning, and it's about an hour long, where there are some interesting guests, and they have an interesting analysis of the market. They also have a YouTube channel where you can find some good analysis that way. They tend to cover all of the markets. So not just the stock market, but they'll talk about bonds, they'll talk about gold, they'll talk about cryptos. They'll have some interesting guests on each time. And this usually has become part of my weekly routine. If you click up here at the top where it says podcast, Financial Sense News Hour, just click on that and you can listen to their latest podcast. They do have an insider service, and I do subscribe to that. I think it's interesting. It might be something that you want to look at. It's not very expensive. It's $150 for a year. Some of the information is not really applicable to the S&P 500, but you never know what you'll hear. You'll never know what insight you'll get. But their weekly podcast is free. Another site that I've actually found to be quite useful is CNBC.com. If you recall in the video where I talked about the financial media, I think CNBC is turned to garbage. But their website still has some good parts to it. And I look through all the different stories each day. I talk about those and I analyze those as part of my process for determining current market conditions. Another site that I mentioned in one of the videos is called Tastyworks. These guys are not only a brokerage outfit, they're also educators. They have a channel where you can watch their live broadcasts. They also have a lot of YouTube videos that you can watch on their channel that way. If you want to go back and you're looking for a certain topic, let's say a certain strategy about covered call writing, you can go in, look for what they talk about with covered call writing, and go through some of their presentations. A lot of people watch this all the time. Sometimes I will bring this up, but I have to admit, there's a couple of people on that channel I find to be rather obnoxious, and they grate on me after a while. That's just my own thing, my own problem. You may not have a problem with that. Another site that I used to use very heavily, this used to be the site that I went to every day, was Google Finance. Well, they've kind of neglected this and they don't really update it all that much. So I've drifted more over into Yahoo Finance. I think they have better information. They have some live broadcasts and videos that you can watch. But for some reason, Google just decided not to make this a real focus. Another really, really good service is a thing called sentimenttrader.com. Jason Gepfert runs this site. It's not free. I can't show you the charts that I see on this website because of copyright laws. If you want to get a subscription to this, it is recommended because he has some real unique ways at looking at things. And he's looking at sentiment. How are people feeling? Are they overly happy? Are they overly distraught? That's when we can often see changes taking place in the markets. Another site that's kind of controversial, but I like controversy, not so much to tell me what to think, but just to look at different perspectives, is a site called zerohedge.com. They do have a paid version, but I just stick with the free version myself. You can find some interesting tidbits of information here from time to time. I mentioned this site in another video called Seeking Alpha. There's a lot of information here, and there's a lot of people who put themselves forth as being experts, and some of them really are experts. I tend to focus more on the S&P 500 information on this website rather than looking for individual stocks, but sometimes through their editorial posts, you might get some interesting perspectives. Another site that I've mentioned, and I mentioned this gentleman in the recommended reading section, is Edward Yardeni, and he has massive amounts of information on his site. I tried to contact him about using some of his information in the videos that I make, and I've never heard back. So I defaulted to not using things. I've kind of taken some different information and developed it into my own way of making charts. But he has just a plethora of information that you can look at, and it's updated regularly. So I'd recommend not only the books that he has available, but I would recommend coming to his website pretty much every day. There's another website that I would highly, highly recommend, and this is my own blog. It's SPXinvestingblog.com. I post articles on here. I post the videos on YouTube on this site as well. I run this myself. I'm recording this in November of 2021. If you look over on the right-hand side, you'll see the last article that I prepared was in July. As I've gotten so focused on doing videos and all the editing and everything that's involved with this, I put the writing to the back burner for now. I'll pick this up again, but writing these articles takes a long time for me personally. I'm not a fast writer, so it can take me many days just to post one article. And then what I also do to try to give it that little extra special touch is I provide an audio recording of the article. And it's not a computer voice. It's me actually reading the article to you. You can log in if you want to download any of these articles as PDFs, or if you want to download the audio version. Some people have found this helpful. In addition to teaching these courses, I also teach English online, and some of my students have found this helpful to read through the article and listen to me speaking the words to help with their pronunciation. One website that can be helpful from time to time is Bank of America's Global Insights. They have some real interesting people that work there, and they often have some real unique insight. Another site that you might find interesting is called shadowstats.com. It's put out by John Williams. Some people think this is a little controversial. Other people like his insight. There is a paid version of this website and a free version. And he just tries to uncover what's really going on, specifically with economic reports. Just to give you an example, if I go up here to the top where it says alternate data, and I come down to inflation, last week we had the CPI come out, and it gave a very high inflation rate. Well, if you look at this chart, the official CPI is the kind of orange line right there, and then he's using an experimental version, and they're pretty much the same with each other. But this is the part that's interesting. If you go back to the CPI and calculate it the way it was calculated in 1980, instead of inflation being over 6%, we would be up close to 10%. Nothing has changed other than the way this report is calculated. If you drop down a little bit, if we go back to how the CPI was calculated in 1990, we would be almost at 15% inflation, where the CPI itself comes in at a little over 6% inflation. This isn't a new way of doing it. This isn't taking new information. This is just calculating it in a slightly different way to come up with numbers that are more friendly towards inflation, to help people think that inflation is not as bad as it really is. So I keep an eye on this. Another site that I have mentioned in a few of my videos is multiple.com. This goes hand in hand with the book Irrational Exuberance, written by Robert Shiller. And there's a lot of really good charts on this website that gives us some good tools that we can use to analyze things. When I do my monthly video based on the economy, I use this site very heavily. There's also Bloomberg.com, which is kind of the top version of financial information right now. Yes, CNBC is pretty good as far as their website. If I was to want to watch one of the financial media channels, it would probably be Fox Business because they've become just total idiots on CNBC. The Bloomberg people are interesting, but they talk about a lot of things that I don't really find applicable to my situation. But their website is very good, and they have some unique charts at Bloomberg.com. And a lot of times when I do update videos about what's happening, you'll see that I reference a lot of Bloomberg articles. And then the last website that I'll go through is Yahoo Finance. And you can find just massive amounts of information on this website. Where Google decided to neglect their website, Yahoo has really picked up and ran with it. So this concludes Module 5, Section 14. This is not an exhaustive list. I just went through my bookmarks and said, what sites do I tend to go to the most? There are other sites that I go to from time to time. There's other ones that I'm looking at right now, but I'm not comfortable sharing that until I get to know these websites a little better. So thank you very much for paying attention to this section, and I'll pick up again with the very, very final section, Section 15.